Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1180, 1180, July the 3rd, 2020, Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, okay, let's go ahead and go through the news of the last 24 hours. Obviously, I think the biggest story of the last 24 hours, and I'm sure you've heard it, unless of course you've been living under a rock, is that the FBI has picked up and arrested Ghislaine Maxwell. She's been arrested on 6 felony counts. Now, according to the FBI, she had been in France. And of course, as many of you know, France does not extradite. They do not have an extradition treaty with anyone. They do not extradite people out of France. So she was safe there. And the FBI knew she was there. And apparently they had been watching her. Now, her fatal mistake was that she buys this property, and it looks like New Hampshire. Beautiful property, multi-million-dollar house, $1-point-something million house, like 100 and some odd acres, a lot of acreage. And she apparently purchased this home with cash through an LLC. So I guess she thought that by using an LLC, it would throw the feds off her path, but apparently it did not. Because as soon as they learned that she had made the move, they swept in and arrested her. So I guess the big question is, what is going to be her cause of death, and when is that going to occur? My guess is they probably will be giving her tissue paper thin sheets, and maybe they'll check those surveillance cameras to see if they're actually working, but I wouldn't count on it. You know, it's funny because after the demise of Jeffrey Epstein, I remember when we were talking about that, and I said, you know, the problem is, yeah, they got rid of Epstein, but, you know, his girl, Ghislaine Maxwell, is still out there, and she probably knows everything he knows. She probably has the same blackmail material on various, you know, powerful so-called elite people that Epstein did. So you're not totally out of the woods just by getting Epstein, as long as she's still running around with all that information in her head, and probably knowing the whereabouts of videotapes or, you know, documents or whatever, receipts, something. So she probably, I mean, I would think that that's what she would be holding on to, is sort of her get out of jail free card, or at least was something to keep the feds from arresting her. Having all that powerful or all that damaging information on these powerful people would probably, I thought, was probably why they had not picked her up yet. I thought, well, she knows too much. She has too much dirt on too many powerful people, and she's too much of a threat to them. So that's why they're, you know, going to leave her alone. As long as they leave her alone, she won't talk. I kind of assumed that's what was going on. Now, I don't know exactly what's going on the inside game here, but obviously Attorney General Bill Barr doesn't care what dirt she's got on whoever. And apparently she is not the only one, because there's a couple stories that talk about the fact that she's being described as an employee of Epstein's, and that there are 2 other employees of Epstein whose names we do not know. So we may hear about 2 other individuals who may be arrested shortly. I don't know that, but that's what's, you know, in these reports. So you can bet that Prince Andrew and Slick Willie are quite nervous right now, but I'm sure they've made various phone calls, and arrangements will be made to make sure that Maxwell doesn't give up any information. But we will see exactly how this is handled. I mean, it's hard to imagine that she too will have an accident in the lockup. But if you go back to Epstein, once they arrested him, I mean, we're all talking about it. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like where I work, everybody's talking, going, man, this guy's not going to last a week. They're going to take this guy out. There's no way. So everybody knew it was coming. Everybody knew it was coming. And then it happened. And then, of course, we get the cover-up. So you might think, well, gosh, are they that arrogant that they would take her out too knowing good and well everybody knows she's going to get whacked as well? I mean, will they actually go that far and then cover that up too? Hell yeah. Hell yes. Absolutely. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. Nothing. So, anyway, I guess that's my question is, two questions I really have is, what is going to be her cause of death, and when is it going to happen? That's the two questions I have at this point. Now, it's possible that justice may be served. It's possible that they might actually make sure that she stays alive long enough to go through the criminal proceedings and I assume be found guilty. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of evidence. I imagine that the government in the UK is not going to put up too much of a fight with Prince Andrew if they're going to, bring him in for, I don't know if they look at him as possibly a witness or as a suspect. I'm not exactly sure how that works. But based on the fact that he's basically been excommunicated from the royal family, he's pretty much been thrown under the bus. I'm sure some deal will be cut with the British government to, go as easy on him as they can. But quite honestly, I mean, the guy is pretty much caught red-handed. He's in the photo with the primary accuser, and she's got a fairly compelling story. She's got witnesses who back her up. I mean, it sounds pretty damaging to me. And obviously the evidence they have was solid enough that they had no problem getting, an indictment. Of course, it's not hard to get an indictment, I guess. You can indict a ham sandwich. But apparently this indictment was made a while back. It's been sealed because they couldn't do anything because she was in France. But as soon as she left France and came to the U.S., I guess they unsealed the indictment and they went there and got her. So we will continue to follow this story like all the rest and see where it goes. But the two questions I have right now is what will be the cause of death and when will that occur? That would be the two main questions I have about Ghislaine Maxwell. Like I say, I'm sure that Prince Andrew and Slick Willie are working the phones at this hour, making sure that she doesn't disclose any secrets. She's probably got the goods on a lot of people. And, you get a person like that, that's a type of person that can't really do time. I mean, she's a wealthy socialite. She's used to having complete freedom and has all this money and privilege. People like that don't do very well in prison. They'll do almost anything to avoid prison. That's what makes her a dangerous witness to a lot of powerful people. And if she decides to cooperate, which a person in her situation usually will, she decides to cooperate and she agrees to provide information that could help the FBI obtain all this video footage that we're told exists, then that could be very damaging to a lot of people and a lot of very powerful people. And we know that Epstein was mostly running around with people on the left. He was a big-time contributor to left-wing causes and politicians. He ran around with a lot of left-wing sociopaths and perverts, a lot of the Hollywood elites, a lot of globalist elites. And so, I mean, we'll just have to see what happens. I was a little surprised when I heard this, but I'm glad because the guy was a pervert. She's obviously a twisted sociopath herself to be out recruiting underage girls to be involved in this sort of thing. Obviously shows you she's kind of sick, and it even suggests in the indictment that she was involved in some of this activity herself, that she wasn't just procuring these young girls, that she too was having some sort of, sexual relations with these young girls as well. So she's obviously a freak of some sort. And very shady character. Certainly, if you go into the history and look at who her father was and all the issues that he was having, all those connections apparently to intelligence agencies, specifically Israeli intelligence. There's something going on, as I've said before. I think that Epstein was involved with some intelligence agencies, because a lot of these intelligence agencies would be very interested in the types of information that Epstein had, damaging information he had, or his ability to lure people into his trap. And that would be something the intelligence agencies would be very interested in, to get Epstein to work for them, to get him to lure people into his web, and then provide that information to the intelligence agencies, and then they could use that to control these people who they could view as a threat, or just being able to control powerful people. Sometimes something that intelligence agencies like to be able to have an option to do if they ever need to. So I think that this thing is much deeper and much wider than we even know. I think it involves some intelligence agencies, and I think it goes back a long way with her father, Epstein. I think there's a lot going on here. Some very dark stuff going on with this. And we'll just have to watch and see if, in fact, she sings or if she keeps her mouth shut. But most importantly, I think my two questions are, how long is she going to remain alive? And and I don't think it'll be that long, and what will be the cause of death? That would be my two questions. So, I'm sure there'll be a lot of interesting comments in the comments section. I can assure you on Friday evening I will be reviewing the comments. I've been so busy this week with things going on at work, I don't think I've even checked the comments section in like 3 days. So we've just had a lot going on this week. But Friday evening I expect to take a look at some of the comments. And I'm sure there'll be some very entertaining comments in the comments section. Well, it looks like the Penguin has been foiled again. Foiled again. That's right. The Supreme Court has ruled that Jerry Nadler's committee cannot have the Mueller grand jury witness testimony transcripts. So obviously Nads has been trying to get his hands on these transcripts, and it's gone all the way to the Supreme Court, and it looks like they finally ruled against the Penguin, and so he's foiled again. So he is not going to get the grand jury witness testimony transcripts from the Mueller witch hunt. That's good news for Trump and bad news for the Penguin. But the Penguin usually does lose, does he not? The guy's a sad sack. And a total failure, by the way. Well, it looked like the reports yesterday were that the former time zone known as CHOP the cops had moved in on Wednesday morning. They had taken back the CHOP zone, had arrested some people, and were pushing the rest of them out, and things were reported yesterday. Things were kind of returning somewhat to normal, but it looks like things flared up again last night, Thursday night, or Wednesday night, actually. So nighttime came after they came in early in the morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning, and did all that. And I guess they felt they had things going the right way, or it looked like things were returning to normal. But then nighttime fell, and then here came the crazies back. So they called out the cops in full riot force and full riot gear, and they came out, and you can watch the video for yourself. They threw down with the protesters some more. Apparently they had set up a sort of a barrier around what had formerly been the CHOP zone. And then as these rioters began to come across the barrier, that's when they had to run in with the cops. Then the cops, of course, started beating them down, spraying them with pepper spray, making arrests. It looks like there were over 24 people arrested on late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. So it looks like that the riots are back on. there are more people now flooding into the zone. It looks like they're not going to leave. They're going to continue to have people go back into the zone and try to occupy there. And they're not going away quietly. So, again, this is, as I said, and as we all knew, this is going to end very badly. And it is ending very badly. These people are not going to go away peacefully or quietly. You're going to have to beat a lot of these people down, lock them up, take them to jail, and hold them there. You can't just release them. They just come back. So it looks like things are not over at the chop zone. It's still going on. It's now Thursday evening. It's about 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here where I am. And I just checked the news feed before I started the video, and there's no updates on what's going on up there now. But I think we can assume that sometime here in this evening hours we'll see more of this flare up, because the latest report that I was looking at says that it looks like the people are flowing back into the chop zone once darkness falls, and they're back at it. So it looks like it's the never-ending riot. It just refuses to go away. So, I mean, they're going to have to start mass arresting people, bring in the buses, and start arresting them by the dozens and dozens. And, you know, you have to hold them. You can't just charge them and then release them. They turn around and go right back. So, it's a hell of a mess that the jerk and gherkin has created there, had she put her foot down on day one and never allowed this to go on. But now she's empowered these people, which brought more and more people in from places outside the immediate area. And now it's just a shit show. And you know, it's going to end badly when it finally comes to an end. And I don't know when that is. I mean, if these people want to continue to go back and continue to get beat down and arrested and everything else, I think a lot of the people, when I was watching the video, it looked to me like a lot of the people I was seeing in the video clip were like spectators. It's almost like a spectator sport now for people, I think, to go down to the chop zone, or what was formerly the chop zone, and watch the interaction between the cops and the rioters. And I think probably a lot of those people are just there for the entertainment. They're there to observe and watch and check it out, basically. So I think it makes it look worse than it is. I think, but there are obviously still a few hardcore holdouts who are refusing to comply with police orders, and they are just, you know, they're just refusing to go. But I think the majority of people I was looking at in the video were spectators, because as the cops were pushing forward and pushing these people back, the ones who were coming up in the cops' face and screaming at them and stuff, the cops were definitely, you know, knocking them down, and if they took a swing at a cop or made a move toward a cop, they'd throw them down and arrest them, cuff them. But the majority of people would continue just to move back. They were walking back. As the cops were pushing forward, these people are all walking backward, apparently more interested in observing what was going on. So I think 95% of these people are, you know, observers. You know, it's like people, when you drive down the highway and you see a traffic accident, you know, you're kind of inclined to look, you know, and everybody wants to look at the car wreck. And I think that's what's going on. People are there to just check it out. But there's a small group, apparently, of hardcore holdouts, and I guess they want to stick around and get their ass kicked and get arrested. I guess nothing else better to do. Why not? We had Jim Jordan on Fox News, and they were talking to him about these hearings that are coming up on July the 28th with Attorney General Barr. And what these are all about. Of course, obviously, they're trying to impeach Barr. And, of course, Jim Jordan was saying essentially what we've been saying here for a couple days, what I've read, you know, over the past week or so in the comment section, even going back before that when we first heard this was going to happen, and just watching other YouTubers and stuff. I think everyone understands they're going to try to impeach Barr. We figured that out. Okay, so, and we were thinking, okay, yeah, it's almost certainly because of the Durham investigation. They're trying to discredit Barr as much as they can. They know they're not going to succeed in impeaching him, but if they can dirty him up, then they can use that when the Durham investigation finally is concluded and indictments come down, assuming that happens, and I believe it will happen. And obviously they believe it's going to happen because you can see what they're doing. And I've even suggested Now, Jim Jordan is not suggesting this. I'm suggesting this. Is that, like I said yesterday at the end of yesterday's video, where Lionel's saying, hey, you know, a lot of the stuff that's happening right now, I think, has a lot more to do with the Durham investigation, whether it's you know, COVID-19 hoax, or whether it's this hoax or that hoax. I think a lot of this stuff is trying to discredit Trump, the administration, the Attorney General, and just create mass chaos as sort of a distraction from the Durham investigation. So when it drops, it can be immediately politicized and spun. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think you know, there's a lot of YouTubers, not just Lionel, who's made that suggestion. Other people in the comment section on my videos have made the same accusations I have as well. I think there's a lot to that. I don't necessarily think the coronavirus, it's a bit conspiratorial to say it was created specifically to distract them from the Durham investigation. I don't believe that, but I believe that these people are opportunists, and they will take advantage of every opportunity. So I think they're taking advantage of these opportunities. Also, as we learned from Attorney General Barr, he didn't get real specific about it, but in his last interview, he mentioned that one of the things that's kind of, you know, being a hindrance to Durham's investigation is the fact that the Democrats control the court system in D.C. and New York, and this is likely where grand juries would be convened. And if the Democrats can use coronavirus as a way to say, well, we can't convene grand juries because of coronavirus, that keeps Durham from being able to convene grand juries. So it's very likely what is throwing a wrench in Durham's spokes is the fact that he can't get grand juries because of coronavirus. So maybe the Democrats think if they can keep coronavirus going until November and prevent Durham from being able to seat a grand jury, it will keep him from being able to get these indictments. Maybe that's their thinking. It's certainly, I think, a plausible theory based on everything we're seeing here. So Jim Jordan doesn't go that far, but Jim Jordan specifically was talking about the Barr hearing, and he says, yeah, well, Attorney General Barr, these hearings are all about impeaching Barr, and it's all about the Durham investigation. So yeah, I do agree Jim Jordan gets it. Obviously, he has to be careful about what he says. I don't think he would go quite as far as I've just gone, or some of us would go, because, you know, he has to be careful. But I bet if you could have a personal one-on-one conversation with Jim Jordan and he didn't think it was being recorded, I don't think he would hesitate to tell you that he also probably believes that coronavirus not necessarily was created to interfere with the Durham investigation, but is being used to hinder the Durham investigation. I think that's perfectly plausible. My guess is Jim Jordan feels the same, but it's probably not the type of thing you can go out and say as a congressman without some evidence. So, but I think he is absolutely 100% correct, and I think most people are in agreement that a lot of what we're seeing now has to do with the Durham investigation. And what does that mean? That means that even though a lot of you don't believe it, and that's okay, and I understand why a lot of you don't believe there's going to be anybody held accountable, but obviously the Democrats, people in the deep state, obviously a lot of them believe that Barr and Durham are going to take some fairly serious legal action against the criminal perpetrators. So yeah, I'm good with that. Jim Jordan, probably on the money. Yes, we are seeing more arrests. Just as Barr promised, we have the FBI, we have the U.S. Marshals are now reviewing a lot of video footage. There's going to be many arrests. We're talking many dozens and dozens and dozens as they identify these people. But they got the one guy, and I'm really glad, because we've seen this guy. I've seen this guy pop up in so many damn videos. I remember this guy from Occupy Wall Street. I remember this guy was out there with a megaphone during Occupy Wall Street. It's the same guy. He's got a real memorable face. You see this guy's face, you remember it. And I also remember this guy in a video where it was during the 2016 election, and James O'Keefe was with his girlfriend, I think, and he was at a Bernie Sanders rally and or speech or whatever, and he was walking down the street through this like park area, and he was accosted by some radicals, and that's on video. And then there's another clip that's part of that video where he finds himself in a conversation with 5 commies, and they literally have the the sickle and hammer flag. They're openly endorsing communism, and O'Keefe is actually trying to have a conversation, and most of the guys wouldn't talk, but 1 or 2 of them would, and one of them was this guy that was trying to make, argue the communism versus capitalism thing with James O'Keefe. And that's where I first really remember this guy's face from. I also remember this guy from, I think, another riot. So this guy's obviously Antifa. And he is obviously like a leader because, he seems to be like in a leadership role. So they've got his name. I didn't write it down, but they've got his name, and he is the one who accosted or assaulted, however you want to look at it, Jack Posobiec. We saw that video here about 3 or 4 days ago, and he's also been arrested as being the one who led the effort to take down the Andrew Jackson monument. So that's what he's actually being charged with, as being the guy who was the ringleader who organized the effort to take down the Andrew Jackson monument. But he's also the same guy who accosted Jack Posobiec, and he's also a guy whose face I have seen many times before. So he's definitely like some level of leader in Antifa. So it's good that he's been taken off the street. Hopefully, he will not be released, or at least they'll set a high bail for this guy, because he's pretty dangerous, this dude. So that's good news. But I don't know that with all the arrests that are happening across the country and the various organizations involved in this, now they got the Department of Homeland Security is also now involved in this. Various other, I don't know how many law enforcement agencies, but Barr has set up a task force, which includes like 7 or 8 different police type organizations, ATF, FBI, DHS, U.S. Marshals. So there's like 7 or 8 different police organizations that are involved as part of this task force to look at all this video, track these people down, and arrest them. So I'm glad that there is finally a real hard push to get these people off the street. They're very dangerous. Now, what typically happens with groups like this is that once they take a beating and they start getting arrested and things like that, they usually go underground at that point. So I think that's what we can expect Antifa to be a year from now. I don't think we'll see them quite making so many public demonstrations, because so many of them will be getting arrested and things. They'll eventually not want to do that. So this organization will likely be driven underground. And once they're driven underground, then you have to use different tactics. And a lot of times it's possible they can bring in Delta Force. Once they go underground, you bring in someone like Delta Force, who operates in that sort of off the record sort of activities that they do. And they generally get in there and take out the leadership by whatever means necessary. They disappear, basically. And there's only one group in the country that's authorized to carry out that type of activity, and that would be Delta Force. Well, it looks like Trump created 4.8 million jobs last month. It's hard to believe, despite that. In fact, I think it's a record, the largest number of jobs ever created in 1 month. Obviously, there's some sputtering going on because we're getting a lot of fake news, and the fake coronavirus numbers are throwing a wrench in the spokes, but Trump's fighting. A lot of states are fighting, pushing back to get their economies open again. It's a great number, and coming off of last month's number, the unemployment number dropped substantially. 4.8 million jobs. That's incredible for a month. That's extraordinary. I mean, that's hard to believe, really. That number, I mean, you see it and just, wait, are you sure that's right? 4.8 million. That's a lot. So the naysayers, once again, the doom and gloom predictors, were wrong again. And that just shows how resilient Trump's economic policies are. I mean, it's like the economy is just wound up, just waiting to just explode, because it's been, depressed for 4 or 5 months. And it's just dying to, I mean, people are just dying to just go out and buy stuff and go out and go shopping and go to here and go there and do this and do that. And it's like, despite all the efforts by the demons to keep the economy shut down, to do damage to Trump and Republicans in November, despite all that, the economy is so resilient and so wound up and ready to go that it's just nearly impossible to keep a good man down, I guess you might say. So yes, the economy continues to rebound despite all the efforts by Democrats and others to keep it depressed. And that tells you a lot about the resiliency of our economy and the quality of Trump's economic philosophy in action. And I believe we'll continue to see improvements as we go. And again, as soon as this economy can really open up again, I think we're going to see just extraordinary growth. We're already seeing it, even in a semi-depressed mode. So that's all good news. Good news for Trump. Good news for 2020. And as dismal as things may look some days, especially when you keep getting all these fake polls and you keep getting all this propaganda, it worries a lot of people. But I'm still pretty confident that Trump is going to win in 2020. You just have to try to block out a lot of the negative garbage. Doesn't mean you totally ignore everything and just assume that Trump's not taking a hit. Obviously, he's taking a hit. He's getting hit every single day by his adversaries, and even Republicans in the Senate are doing a horrible job. They're not defending the president whatsoever. They're capitulating to the left and to the Democrats. I just despise these people. I mean, the Republicans in the Senate just absolutely suck. I mean, I really do. But despite that, Trump's doing a great job, and I think he just has to stay on course. I think he's on the right side of all the issues right now. He's getting hit, but at some point you just have to trust and rely on the fact that the American people are smart enough to figure all this out, to see what's going on. I mean, at some point you just have to put some faith in your fellow American and hope to God that they're not as crazy as the people we're seeing on video. Well, I live in Ohio, as most of you know. I live in the southwestern part of Ohio, a little suburb, kind of a rural area about 30 minutes north of Cincinnati, northwest of Cincinnati. But about 2 hours up the road, we have Columbus, Ohio. And, of course, in Columbus, which is named after Christopher Columbus, at least that's what I've been told, that Columbus, Ohio was named after Christopher Columbus. And they had a statue up there. It looks like they have now removed the Christopher Columbus statue in the city of Columbus, which is named after Columbus. Do you think that they're going to rename the city of Columbus? I wouldn't doubt it. Now, I get up to Columbus. I'm up there about twice a month. People from my company are up there once a week or twice a week. So, yeah, we're up around the Columbus area a lot. And it's kind of a mixed town. I mean, it's a much bigger city than Cincinnati. But it's kind of a mixed town. I think it's kind of a purple city. But obviously they have enough lefties. Of course, that's where OSU is. So pretty liberal around OSU. And it looks like, but I think the suburbs and rural areas around Columbus, kind of like where I live here in Cincinnati, outside the suburbs and rural areas outside of Cincinnati, it's mostly Republican, conservative, whatever. I think the same is true in Columbus.